Someone recently told me that I should be focusing more on spiritual realities and less on political realities. And I appreciate the feedback. It's true, the focus has to be on the spiritual. And if you add up everything I've said in the past year, the focus really is quite spiritual. I understand that most people are not used to a priest making moral comments about political realities. But it's true, a priest has to make moral comments on the culture and politics because these issues help or hurt people. Isn't it my job to speak about human rights? Jesus himself engaged the leaders of his day on the political and moral issues of the time. Do you remember when he upbraided the Pharisees? That's a political comment. That is why the church has this huge body of literature called her social teaching. So whatever touches the human person has to be addressed, whether it's sexuality, human dignity, or politics. When the Pope, bishops, and priests apply these principles correctly to current reality, then we are doing our job. Today is the fourth of 4 pro-life homilies. We said 4 weeks ago these are going to be really challenging. Today I'm probably going to say the most politically incorrect thing for Vancouverites. And if you're just joining us, I hope, honestly, that this doesn't overwhelm you. And the politically incorrect statement is this. President Trump, according to one count, advanced 16 hugely important pro-life initiatives, and he helped save thousands of preborn babies. Here's what I'm not going to say, that he's a great person. I can't judge that because I don't see everything he does. I do believe he lies. He's done many things that are immoral. He might be playing the Christian card to get votes. I think many of his comments are wrong. But I also don't believe everything the media says about him, because as we pointed out last week, and after having watched attentively for the past 20 years the cultural climate of our world, I know the media spins and lies about many things, especially about pro-life issues, pro-life politicians, and the policies they make. So I would ask you to hear the argument I'm going to make. And also, parents, just a warning, or if anyone here is squeamish, I want to respect your rights. I'm going to show one image of an aborted baby later on. So I'll give you a warning before then, but just so you're aware, especially if you don't want your children to see it. Today's homily is about seeing our pro-life convictions to their logical end. Does abortion rip apart an innocent human being, as the pictures we showed 3 weeks ago demonstrate? Does abortion kill, by far, the most people in the world? If it does, then we need to support politicians who stop it, and we need to oppose politicians who encourage it. One of the teachings of Jesus today is, no good tree bears bad fruit. Nor again does a bad tree bear good fruit. Each tree is known by its fruit. Figs are not gathered from thorns, nor are grapes picked from a bramble bush. Jesus is talking about good and bad people, but we also know from other parts of the Bible, for example, the first letter of St. John, that good people sin. Good people also produce some bad fruit. We also know that even bad people produce some good fruit. So there is a mixture of good and bad in each one of us, and the fruit we produce is a mixture of good and bad. We need to assess each person fairly and then judge the whole. When it comes to evaluating our political leaders and their policies, it's very difficult because most politicians have a well-earned reputation for misleading people, for mincing words, for telling people what they want to hear. In St. Matthew's Gospel, Jesus says, "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but underneath are ravenous wolves." This is why when evaluating politicians, we have to pay more attention to their actions than to their words. This goes for Presidents Trump, Obama, and Biden, as well as Prime Minister Trudeau. When President Trump was interviewed a few years ago by Catholic reporter Raymond Arroyo, I do believe he was lying about his prayer life. But what is worse than that is that President Biden and Prime Minister Trudeau both call themselves Catholic, but they actively oppose our most fundamental beliefs about the sanctity of life, human dignity, and marriage. Perhaps the most even-handed assessment of Trump has been by the American bishops. In 2020, Father Thomas Rees, he analyzed 160 press releases by the American bishops. He summarized all these 160 releases, these analyses, and he entitled his article, Catholic Bishops Reprimand Trump as Often as They Praise Him. So the American bishops, and sometimes I myself disagree on how the bishops apply certain church teaching, how they apply it concretely, but I have to say, overall, their criticism of President Trump is very intelligent and thoughtful. Here is a list of issues on which they criticize President Trump: immigration, foreign policy, the death penalty, the environment, and housing. They attacked his administration with the following words: misguided and untenable, appalling, devastating, heartbreaking, unlawful and inhumane, callous, disturbing, contrary to American and Christian values. They said, "We are deeply disappointed that the administration continues to push forward to end DACA." For those who don't know, DACA protects children from deportation who were brought into the United States illegally as children. They also opposed his border wall, his treatment of asylum seekers, withdrawing from the Treaty on Nuclear Disarmament, withdrawal from the Iran nuclear agreement, his embargo of Cuba, the Equality Act, etc. These issues are very important because sometimes people accuse pro-lifers of being one issue. They say, all you people care about is abortion. That might be true of a few, but it's not true of most pro-lifers. We care about these issues, and we have to do what we can to help. But the bishops also agreed with President Trump's decisions on life, like the government funding of abortion, fetal tissue research, assisted suicide, religious freedom, conscience protection, and education. This is the argument that pro-lifers make. They say, many issues are important, and all of them should be given their due. But abortion is the number one moral issue because it's life and death. This is the chart of leading causes of death in the United States in 2019. And if you wonder why we didn't choose 2020, it's another question, 2021. But COVID would be number 3. They tally 370, 380,000 deaths each year. But there's 2019, United States. I have to admit, I was surprised. Heart disease kills more people than abortion in the United States. But the moral difference between death by abortion and death by heart disease is that abortion is the direct action against a human life. No one is going out purposely to end someone's life by heart disease. If racism were the number one cause of murder, all pro-lifers would support that, but it's not. The number one cause of murder is abortion, by far, not even close. And this is why many people support President Trump, in spite of his other horrible decisions. And in 1 minute, I'm just going to show that image. So parents, I'm giving you about a minute's warning. Some people ask, why do we give President Trump a pass when he does so many, we give him a pass, he does so many bad things, but we give him a pass because he's pro-life? That's a good question, and there are 2 answers. Number 1, we don't give him a pass. We criticize him on the wrong he does. Those issues, the negative issues, we do criticize him. And number 2, why do people give Presidents Obama and Biden, Prime Minister Trudeau, for an example, why do they give them a pass when they actively do everything they publicly can to support the killing of preborn children? We cannot say that all issues are of equal weight because some issues hurt people, other issues kill people, and some issues hurt by far many more people. 630,000 abortions. Again, we are talking about the number one cause of murder that rips an innocent person apart. And so if parents, if you don't want your children to see this, or if you yourselves don't want to look, you might just want to close your eyes now or look down. This is an image of a 15-week baby who was aborted. And this is what many politicians support. Okay, thank you. Do I think President Trump is playing the Christian card to get votes? Yes. Do I think he's now playing the pro-life card to get votes? Yes. But I also think he is truly pro-life now. I think he's really changed his mind. Back in 1999, he was pro-choice. And even if he just did this to get votes, the reality is that he's followed through. A pro-life group in the United States called the Susan B. Anthony List has actually a list of 16 factual pro-life accomplishments of President Trump. For example, he has prevented $8.8 billion from going to abortion overseas. He has cut $60 million from supporting Planned Parenthood, the number one provider of abortion in the United States. And he signed an executive order called the Born Alive Act. The Born Alive Act says that if a baby survives an abortion, nurses and doctors must give that baby medical care, because prior to that, many doctors and nurses wouldn't care for the baby. You know a tree by its fruit. And if President Biden wanted to get pro-life votes, all he would have to do is support life, and he would have my support. When I say personally that I favor President Trump over President Biden, that is because I'm trying to do the greatest good possible. But it does not mean I support the wrong he does. And all this reasoning applies, we have to apply it equally. I would apply it to Prime Minister Trudeau. Prime Minister Trudeau has some good in him. He's got a great name. Being consistent in our pro-life views is who we are meant to be. Voting for good politicians is an important duty, but maybe more important is our public witness. This is our final Sunday to sign up for 40 Days for Life. I thank all of you who have signed up. This is a great chance to bear fruit. Let's pay attention to the good and bad that people do. First of all, we have to pay attention to ourselves. Are we bearing good fruit? And then we can pay attention to politicians. Ultimately, we know a tree by its fruit.